Welcome to the Helm Developer Weekly Call for Thursday, June 20th, 2019. And for those of you who don't have it, into chat, I'll paste the minutes and agenda. We normally go through announcements, stand-up, discussion, and then assignments. And so we'll start off with announcements. Somebody had a Helm Summit update listed here. Is there somebody here who can give that?
I can give an update. I think it might have been Michelle who was asking for that. But for the Helm Summit update, so the program committee just finished their reviews last week on Saturday. So the co-chairs, we now have access to the spreadsheet of all the final scores. What we're going through now, and just for anyone who's unaware who are the co-chairs, that's myself, Michelle, Priyanka, who's from GitLab, and Reinhard. So the four of us are part of the co-chair committee. So we're going to be looking at the scores this week. And I think our deadline is the end of June to come up with the schedule for the Helm Summit. So we'll be looking at that. We've been talking with the LF, specifically with Nancy Lancaster and Emily Roof, and her coworkers as well, basically to work through what the Helm Summit schedule will be like we're splitting how we're doing the lightning talks, how we're doing the regular presentations, how we're doing workshops, and splitting up the tracks and doing all that kind of fun stuff. So that's what we're currently working through. Yesterday was essentially a meeting about going through the schedule and seeing if that works, and then we can iterate from there based on how we accept the CFPs and how we go through and building the schedule. So that's all I have to update for the Helm Summit.
All right, thank you. And then we go into, does anybody have any other announcements? Anything? Going once, going twice, going three times. Then we go into stand-up. And just to shake things up, I'll start off with Taylor.
Okay, so this week I have been working on troubleshooting the issue where sometimes the certain objects do not get updated in Kubernetes even though the manifests are all correct. It's a Helm 2 bug. It's kind of like persisted around for a couple of years and it's been hard to nail down. The folks over at Mattermost told me that there's something they can get relatively regularly, so I am working on debugging that for the rest of this week and into next week until I figure out what's going on about why that's happening sometimes. And then there's also something that'll be in the discussion topics. I've been working on a PR I've been reviewing to help fix some bugs with hook deletion. So with delete hooks, not hook deletion. So anyway, I'll get to that in the discussion, and that's it for me. So I will pass it off to Josh.
Hey, this week I'm giving talks in the Midwest and evangelizing on Helm. I hope to next week dive a little deeper into what's going on with registry stuff. Want to connect with Matt Fisher. Besides that, close a few Chart Museum PRs. And let's see, Martin.
Hi. So this week I've been concentrating, looking at the migration work. So diving into a bit deeper, looking at the schemas around the release objects and its different schemas around in V2 and V3, and just getting a bit further into that. So I will try and get a proposal for maybe the end of next week, get that up there so we can have a discussion on it. And see how that goes. Apart from that, doing some PR reviews, and sorry on one PR, whatever way I reviewed it and tested it, I've just realized that I never read the echo notice on that, so thanks to Matt Fisher for reverting that PR and just triaging some issues as well. I will now hand over to Matt Fisher.
Yeah, so this week for me, I have been kind of heads down mostly on some of the refactoring work. So there's a package inside of Helm that was ported over, well, not ported over, we have never touched it since Helm 2, which is the downloader package. And for those who don't know that package in particular, that package is responsible for Helm dependency update and how it manages basically how it goes through and builds the dependency tree and how it updates that, how it fetches the charts from the chart repository, and how it interacts with like the getters, so then you can actually pull down those the charts essentially. So one of the problems as I'm going through some of the OCI integration stuff is that a lot of the chart downloader package relies on some small idiosyncrasies. It basically makes assumptions that you're a chart repository always, and sometimes you're not wanting that. So for example, like the OCI registries where we're not downloading a local index of all the charts and everything else, you're actually fetching from the registry to get the tags and all that information. So I'm basically going through the chart downloader package to take a look at some of the assumptions that are being made in there. Like passing through basic HTTP username and passwords, being thrown in multiple different structures. So just some code cleanup, so then we can go through and actually do an OCI registry implementation of a getter, so then we can actually fetch that charts when you do a Helm dep up or Helm install or things like that. So that's the end goal for me. So I've been deep in the weeds with that this week. As well, I've also been with, of course, the Helm Summit stuff. So I've been doing that. I'll probably this week be focusing a little bit more on that too, starting next week, just to go through the evaluations of the CFPs and making sure that we have a proper schedule for the Helm Summit. So I think that brings us back to Farina.
All right, so this week, did we get everyone? Just double check. Yes, it looks like it. All right, so this week I did a handful of pull requests against Helm. Just some cleanup stuff. We released a new version of Sprig, tweaking ingress, but also adding more to the capabilities. One of the things we've been looking at is enhancing the capabilities so you can detect individual objects in the API versions, not just API groups. And so there's some more pull requests around that as well. And I've also just been reviewing stuff and doing some of what we used to do for Issue Sherpa, so Fisher doesn't have to do everything. That's mostly it. Okay, that's us. Okay.
And I also wanted to say thank you, Farina, for going through with like Michelle's PR on Helm test and keeping cognizant of like backwards compatibility and all those different things. So you're bringing up some good discussions there. So I appreciate you taking a look at those PR reviews as well. I'm gonna try. So that's the core folks. Is there anyone from the community who wanted to provide a stand-up? All right. Then with that, we'll move on to the discussion topics. And we seem to have 4 discussion topics for the week. The first one is the Helm 3 OCI, enforcement of tags. Josh, is that you? Joshua, is that you?
That's me. Yeah, so been pushing this off for a few weeks now. Yeah, so there is no, OCI does not have a rule set on the tag that you push, but a couple discussions have come up, and because Helm 2 enforces semver on versions, the idea is that we don't allow people to do non-semver tags when they're pushing from a registry with Helm. So I'm wondering if there's any opinions against that. It seems like a good idea, and there seems to be mostly support for that.
Yeah, so as going through the downloader package, just so a little bit of background context in here, there's actually inside of the chart downloader, one of the things that we need to do is essentially fetch the latest version of a chart available and make sure. So for example, for someone who is trying to install I don't know, WordPress or Postgres for the first time, they may not specify a tag, but they want to have the latest available version of that. So inside of Helm 2 with the chart repository API, we essentially check the index to find the latest version of a tag available. And when we find that, that is what we use as the version to be deployed. So I think that's been the majority of the reason why we've done Semver compatible tags, is to be able to do compatibility checks between all the different available versions of a package and find out which one is considered quote unquote the latest, without having any mutability or mutable tags in there. So then we can ensure that the package that someone's installing is the same version every time if that tag doesn't change, for example.
Yeah, I think the big thing here is there's a whole bunch that happens around dependency management and resolution, right? So you've got to try to pick up the latest when you don't specify a version. And you could say, well, we push that to a tag. It doesn't matter because they could pass in any tag. But we also do, in the requirements, we do dependency resolution based on ranges, right? And so if we break out of Semver, now that then becomes a problem. And you run into issues of, okay, how do we do it? Are we looking at branches? Are we looking at other things? What's going on? Right? Basically, our dependency management and resolution becomes more complicated. So I'm not saying we don't do it. I'm just saying somebody should want to be able to take on redoing our resolution scheme if we're going to change from it.
So what I'm kind of hearing from other Matt, though, is that if you do Helm install WordPress without a version, you're basically looking at doing Semver comparisons and getting the latest. But with OCI, because there's no local index, there's not really a way for us to find that. Is that part of what you're saying?
No, we can actually fetch that. The repository or the registry API does have a way of, when you look at a repository, there is a way to check all of the available tags that are part of that repository. And so we can, so that essentially, from what I've been using, that can be used as like a replacement for the local cached index. And we can do Semver compatible checks on the available tags inside of the repository there. So that's one way we can approach it.
Have you validated that from the perspective of like the ORAS library?
Yes, I have actually. So what I had to do inside of there, I had to make some changes, not inside of Containerd itself, but I basically had to make a custom puller so that it didn't pull a manifest or something like that, but it pulled from a specific API endpoint that the registry or the OCI API exposes. So Containerd doesn't natively support that endpoint, but there is a way to pull that information out and to get those tags and to be able to do Semver checks and find the latest version. I'll see if I can pull the actual source code offline, but I can show you that.
Okay, yeah, let's we can move on to the next topic, but that's good to know. I think we should keep it, and I'll propose that. But
yeah, my only suggestion is if there's actual interest in not supporting Semver incompatible tags, and if there is, I know there has been some people who've been asking for that, like for pre-release versions or for versions that just like don't, like they're a git commit or they just don't follow the Semver compatibility thing. My suggestion would be, if someone wants to do that, then I'd suggest putting up a proposal on those kind of things, because we would need to have a way of either explaining why we can't do Semver compatible checks or version checks, and how do we address those use cases. But if we want to just say, no, we can't do that.
It could just be if you try to do a pool, if you want to use something that's not Semver, you would have to just be explicit about the tag.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah, exactly.
It could just be both. I mean, and then maybe when you're doing the save or the push, it tries to enforce it, and maybe we have an override, but that can all come later.
This also reminds me of the whole caching thing. We wanted to cache things locally, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got a tag that's not semver, then we're basically saying now you've got mutability of the tag, because like a latest tag, the digest can change. So how do we do with caching and pulling from the cache then? If the tag's value may change, like you do a tag of stable and then you keep updating it. How does our cache handle that?
I don't think that really makes a difference. Everything's stored as like as blobs with a SHA. So you would basically just have two different things pointing to the same SHA, or
So in the way
two
we
different SHAs, and
yeah, we'd have two different SHAs, but then so we'd have to make a call out to find out the right SHA for stable every time that it changed, right? We couldn't just go to the cache, we'd still have to do a network request. Because if it's a version,
well, no, you think about like Docker, right? Like you don't, unless you're doing another Docker pool, you're not, you're still going to use the one that's cached.
okay, so there's an explicit push and pull we always have to do. Okay.
Yeah.
I think we very much have to document all of that stuff in the new workflows, because a lot of this stuff happens automatic today, and we're saying it's not going to happen automatic anymore. If you want to do something that isn't a semver number, it doesn't happen automatic. You have to do everything manual, and I think we have to be very explicit in communicating that, or we'll run into, people are going to run into problems. We should at least have the docs say it the right way.
Speaking of docs, there is now a registry docs on the docs. So let me find that. But happy to move on and continue this discussion offline.
Okay. Anybody have anything else they want to throw in on this? Sweet. Then let's move on to PR reviews. And it looks like I'm the sucker who's got that today. Adam and I talked about it. So we've got two rules with Helm PR reviews right now. If it's Helm version 2, you need to have 2 maintainers. If it's a large or bigger pull request, to approve it before it can be merged. Okay. If it's on Helm 3, every single pull request requires 2 people to approve it. Okay, every 2 Helm maintainers to approve it. Every single pull request. It's a flat rule. If you look in the dev v3 contributing file, it's actually in there. It's one of the things we talked about several months ago. And we need people to start reviewing things. Most of the reviews have been by Mr. Fisher and myself, which means our PRs ain't gonna go in. We need a third person.
For V3 PRs, right?
For V3 PRs to go in.
So I'm getting more time here to work on Helm 3 in about a week or so. And so I'll be able to start jumping in.
Yeah, and it would be nice if we could get some of the other maintainers to also jump in, although, who's on the call? To jump in and start reviewing these. Some of these are pretty simple, and they've got small changes to them. Some of them are more complex, like the last one of removing the username and password fields from Chart Downloader. That you really got to dig into, especially since it's a refactor part. But some of them are pretty simple. So if we could get some folks to start helping to review, we're starting to see, I think, when we were here last week, we had about 110, and now we're up to 124 open pull requests, and it's slowly growing. I'm debating whether I even open another pull request, even though I've got 3 or 4 I want to go right, because it's just going to keep growing right now. And so, you know, what can we do to, and maybe the thing is what can we do to incentivize people to add more or to do more pull request reviews? Is there something we can do to the maintainers to incentivize folks? I know people are busy, but is there anybody got any ideas on that?
I've been pondering this for a while. For me, the big issue is if we can figure out a way we can maybe run some more E2E tests. I mean, we already run plenty of tests, but there's some things where it's like how the different complex behaviors think where we end up introducing a regression if we're not manually testing some of the things. It really depends on the PR. Like once you've been a maintainer for a while, you kind of get a feel for which things you need to go like, okay, I need to double check this versus things you don't. And if we didn't have to worry about that as much, then that might help. But that's just,
yeah, not to volunteer myself for anything, but I've been thinking a while adding like an acceptance test suite to Helm using Robot. But if we can come up with Taylor, if you can come up with the different cases, I can maybe look in that, like the different cases that you're talking about doing manually.
I'll need to start keeping track of all the ones I do, but it's honestly just like kind of like the full, I mean, a legitimate end-to-end test where like I
Right, but I mean,
install
we can
it.
hit the charts cluster, right, and do some real stuff.
Yeah, and that's kind of the idea. And I just need to think of how we'd want to structure that some more.
Okay. I mean, okay.
Also, Matt, can we say, like I had the issue like with this a week ago or so where I had a small docs change. Can we make it if it's like documentation, it's only one person required?
Yeah, let's take you to the mailing list because I brought something like that up and folks were not quite on with doing it. Nobody spoke up about the change. I didn't try to do lazy consensus. I wanted to have a discussion on the main mailing list and that didn't get anywhere. So maybe I'll come back to that. But this is kind of, it's for everything, right? Even updating Sprig to a new version requires 2 people. But it kind of has highlighted the fact that we're not getting enough maintainers to review things right now. They're just not coming through and you know, if they spent 20 minutes a week reviewing stuff, a bunch of these would go away.
Yeah, one thing on it, Matt, I didn't realize that you needed, so I was still of the V2 opinion. It had to be larger going forward. So yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it was one of the things we discussed a while. It's in and I didn't find it at first. I knew it was there and I went looking for it and Adam dug it up and found where it was documented because I couldn't even find where it was documented. It was not as intuitive to find as you'd think, but it's one of the things that, and I can't even remember the full output of the discussion we had. I think it was in one of these meetings. Oh, sorry, Mr. Fisher found it. Sorry, Mr. Fisher. I thought it was Adam. But see, my memory's failing me already. But yeah, so we do need a bunch of, how do we incentivize maintainers to start doing this?
Yeah, I should be more free again next week. Normally I jump in when I get a chance, but I'll get more this week. Come on.
Great. Since we've only got 3 minutes left, can we jump on and do assignments before we do the last 2 things here real quick?
For sure. So, sorry, just for an action item on this last one as well, should we bring this discussion back to the mailing list?
Yeah, and I can do that.
Okay.
That's good. So assignments for next week. I won't be here. So who wants to moderate and who's up for taking notes?
I do moderation.
Thank you.
I can take notes again.
All right. Then we will jump back now to need a label or a way to assign community members to issues. Should we hold off on this one until Michelle comes back and put it on next week?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Then we can jump to, should we cut 2.14.1 when a certain PR lands? Taylor?
Yeah, so that's a PR that was partially my fault. It was in May, and then I completely missed the notification for some reason. I think it slipped through when I was clearing some out. This is one that I've had a lot of people ping me directly about like, hey, this thing is really blocking us with certain things. It's where the whole PR is fixing where delete hooks don't wait for the resource to get removed from etcd before they continue. And so like it doesn't wait for the whole deletion to propagate and it causes some issues. And so this PR adds a thing to fix that. And so I'm wondering if it'd be worth cutting a 2.14.1 for it. Because we just cut 2.14 recently, so I don't think 2.15 is coming anytime soon. So I kind of wanted to see if people would be okay with cutting a 2.14.1 after that landed.
So here's an interesting question. Kubernetes 1.15 just landed yesterday, I think. So in the past, there's been a push to release a new version of Helm whenever a new version of Kubernetes comes out. So we support the latest version of Kubernetes as soon as it's released. So with that in mind, does that potentially change your opinion on whether we should be releasing a 2.14.1 versus a 2.15.0?
I'm fine with a 2.15.0 because I forgot that 1.15 just came out like today or yesterday or whenever it was.
That's okay because the public clouds only support like version 1.13. So
yeah,
I think it'd be good to maybe do that. Are there any other people who have opinions on it?
Well, is it a straight up bug fix?
It's a bug fix, but like as part of the bug fix, because it's a time, like it has to time out after it can't delete it for a certain amount of time. We had to add another hook annotation, so there's that in there too.
Okay. Then
So
yeah.
I just want to get it out, land it as soon as possible, because people have been waiting for it, and it is totally my fault that I missed that when we had addressed PR comments and everything. So if people are okay with it, then we're gonna need somebody to do the work to get 115 stuff working in Helm, because we always have to do the client go upgrade, and we all know how fun that is.
Yeah, I'm thinking for myself, I would not be available really for doing any kind of like release work necessarily next week if this is like a super high priority item, because I'm working on the co-chair stuff and all that. So if you feel comfortable about going about a 2.14.1 release, then I could help you along with that. Or Martin has also been doing some stuff with the release stuff. So perhaps I'm just trying to figure out who here on the team has done a release.
I have.
Or who can.
Have you done it recently? Because now we've got signing and.
Yeah, I did it when we signed and everything. Well, not the newest signing stuff. I'd always sign the commits and the tag. And all that.
Now we actually signed the binary release and validate it and upload that stuff too. So it's documented. But I think Matt, you, Martin, and I are the people who've gone through that stuff.
Yes.
And I'm out next week. I'm gone.
I can help out. Let's see if we can. So the two things we want to get together is that particular bug around the concurrency on the hooks, and we also want to upgrade to 115. Is it with Cool?
Yeah, and if we don't think we're going to have the people around to do that, I say we cut a 2.14.1, and then we'll do the work, and probably towards the end of July we'll end up with a 2.15.
Yeah, I would expect July for the 2.15, mostly because Kube Control has a problem with, Client Go and API Machinery. I've just had specifically API Machinery and Client Go always have so many changes. That's not going to be fixed in a week, likely, because they do such version breaking that we would want time to do that and test it.
Okay, well then I say we do a 2.14.1. Or are we at 2.14.2? Whatever we're at. It's 2.14.1, right?
I think we have 14.1 gone out.
Okay, so 2.14.2. So let's do that. Martin, I'll sync up with you because we don't want to cut it tomorrow. I'll sync up with you on Monday.
Yeah, don't do it tomorrow.
Yeah, and so I'll sync up with you on Monday, my morning, your afternoon, and then we'll check if there's any other bugs that we should pull in, and we can cut the 2.14.1 release or 2.14.2 release.
Sure.
Okay, sweet.
All right. Do we have anything else then?
I put this in the chat, but I'd love for chart museums using some S3 bucket now. It'd be great to use get Helm for that as well. So I'm doing a release, I think, next week.
Sorry, you're looking for promotion on like the Helm Tech Twitter channel or something?
No. Using get.helm.sh to distribute museum binaries.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can definitely discuss about that. I can help out with that discussion if you want.
Yeah, I mean, just migrating the whole release process to be more consistent with Helms in general. So let me know when you're free. There's a impending 0.9 that can wait.
Yeah, actually, I've been wanting to talk about the discussion about distributing all of our content, not just Helm client binaries on get.helm.sh or like release stuff. So having a discussion on like what's the architecture, how do you get on board with your client releases and all that, and getting it onto get.helm.sh, that'll be a fantastic discussion to have about, and we can start documenting that. So
cool. Yeah, and I can help document it
would be a good pilot program.
Cool.
So yeah, feel free to follow up with me offline.
Will do.
All right, y'all. Thanks for coming. I moved Michelle's topic to next week already. And have a wonderful week. Peace.